everyone, thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Redefining Recruitment. My name is Megan, and we have a fantastic topic for all you employers out there so that you can make your hiring streamlined and efficient. Of course, we have our president of Twice as Nice Recruiting, Patrick Cahill. Patrick, how are you?
Doing great. I love talking about interviews. It means searches are going well.
Always a good thing. And of course, we have Carolee Coleman, our VP of Search. Carolee, how are you today?
Doing awesome, thank you.
Awesome. All right, so if your company is hiring, the interview process can seem really overwhelming and daunting. Knowing how, when, and where to interview is crucial so that you can make the right hire and set your firm up for success. Today, we're going to give you a field guide on the right time to use the three main types of interviews: phone, video, and in person. But first, let's get to know each other. We are Twice as Nice Recruiting, and we do one thing. That's permanent placement. We build every single search from scratch. We have a 9.9% placement fee, and we guarantee your placements for 18 months. We've worked with more than 1,800 clients to fill roles across the board, and today, we're redefining recruitment. Let's just start this off with a very general idea here of what the three main types of interviews are and kind of the pros and cons of each. That's a big question, but it's general. Patrick, I'll punt it to you first. Can we talk about some of the main types of interviews and what might be good or bad about either of them?
Yeah, good or bad or just pros and cons. So, phone-based interview, they're usually the earliest stage tool in the interview process because they're quick to execute. Candidates typically can jump on a phone-based interview during lunch, before work, after work. There's a lot of flexibility. As long as they have a quiet car, quiet spot, they can typically do a phone-based interview. Initial screening, working down to a short list of candidates that might make sense to progress into a more engaged and time-consuming interview process. Of course, the downside is you can't see each other. So there's limited ability to build a rapport with the candidates, help them understand how much fun and how much they could enjoy working with you and your colleagues, but early stage, it's a great tool. Video is the next level. It's a little trickier to schedule than phone, and sometimes employers don't actually think about the implications because they're thinking about, I'm sitting at my desk, I'm ready to do a video interview anytime. But a candidate may not have a quiet professional video environment at all times. And so sometimes if you try to use video too early in the process, it can accidentally slow down your ability to move candidates forward because they will understandably be like, no, I can't just jump on video during my lunch break because my car is not the environment to do a phone-based video interview versus I could do a phone interview there. And so you want to typically wait to a later stage, give them more time to figure out when and where they can do that video-based interview. And what's the positive of that is you get to actually start seeing each other, engaging, and just actually start building a real relationship. The downside is it usually takes a little bit more time to schedule.
That makes sense. And of course, in-person interviews take a lot more time to schedule and a lot more effort from everyone involved. Carolee, can you tell me about the pros and cons and generalities of an in-person interview?
Yes, so typically for in-person interviews, we say they should be saved for the end of the interview and hiring process. They shouldn't happen right out of the gate. The pros of it is you get to meet face to face. It gives you a better opportunity to assess those interpersonal skills and that connection because you can see body language more easily. You can see facial expressions more clearly, and you can get a feel for a person's overall demeanor. So it might be easier to establish that natural connection than it would be over the phone or by video. It can also allow for more dynamic conversations. It's a little bit more obvious when you're face to face when it's your turn to talk, and harder to make it seem like you're just jumping over each other because maybe there's a lag causing that on the video. It also removes any technical barriers. So there's less risk of disruption due to some sort of technical glitch or internet problems. And then on top of all of that, the candidate potentially gets to see your office environment if this face-to-face interview is happening at your office. I'd say the downsides would be that it can be time consuming, especially for the candidate. Them having to go out of their way to travel to the location for the interview could be hard to fit into their already hectic life if they're currently employed. especially if they're further away and it requires more extensive travel. That can also be difficult and that can also be expensive. And so the cost can add up quickly. And assuming you would be the one covering that, that could be a deterrent for you for having those in-person interviews too soon. And given all the constraints around having to get to your office and maybe have more time set aside for a face-to-face interview, it could make it a little bit more limited in the scheduling availability for what someone could make work for that in-person interview.
So let's back up just a little bit. And like I mentioned, we've worked with more than 1,800 clients. So over the course of years and thousands of conversations with thousands of clients, it kind of seems like there's a little bit of a format that employers can follow to make the hiring process really smooth. And typically that starts with those phone interviews. And Patrick, you've kind of alluded to this and we've touched on it a little bit, but why is it so important to start with a phone interview? Why is that kind of the starting point of this process?
So our opinion on the matter, based on working with so many different employers, uh, is that it balances the need to qualify candidates, move quickly on candidates who are engaged and interested, um, and set you up for success on your next step. And so what we found is sometimes employers like, hey, I want to go right to video, or I want to go right to in person. And I think sometimes employers are thinking about that from just their perspective on what is my ideal scenario. And they forget that that candidate, understandably, because they don't have loyalty to you as an organization yet, might be trying to balance potentially 3 or 5 different employers interested in them, especially if they have a very desirable skill set and they are a really strong candidate. And so there's a combination. You want to have empathy for that candidate. They can't take off all these days to interview with, all these employers who are not going to be their future employer. But not only empathy, but also competitive advantage. If you provide an easier, uh, less frictionful path for that candidate to understand if they're going to enjoy working with the organization and for you to qualify them, then you're going to be in a position to actually make that offer to that candidate first, build impressions first, and get top talent before other employers do. So that's why we typically focus on phone first, because someone who is considerate of their professional environment and their commitments to their current employer can really be restricted when trying to do video or in-person interviews with an employer at an early stage.
So speaking of video interviews, Carolee, kind of a big question here, but when, how, and why should employers use video interviews?
Video interviews are great to use when you do feel like there is an established fit with the candidate, right? And you want to dive deeper, you want to learn more, you want to establish more of a connection, because you want to consider the user experience. Video interviews they're a little bit more complicated. You need to get dressed. You need to look professional. Someone, if they wear makeup, they might need to take time to put makeup on to feel comfortable on the video. They might need to clean their house to make it appropriate for the video interview. So again, you want to make sure that there's a fit so that it's actually compelling for the candidate to take the time to make that happen. You want to kind of have them excited about the opportunity already, and that might be required in that phone interview to really sell them on why they should be interested, right? It's a two-way street. And so it's also one of those things to consider the timing, like Patrick was talking about. So they may have a lot of other things going on. So again, once you've established that there is a fit, it's a great time to do a video interview. Bring in other people, have them meet other people they may be working with, or maybe meet the person they're working under if perhaps the phone interview was with an HR person. And so the video interview, again, is a great time to further establish if there's a fit. It's a great step to use if the candidate is going to be working remotely from far away, and you want to make sure, again, that there's that established fit before you bring them in face to face.
So, Patrick, let's talk about the in-person interview. Why is this one of the last steps that employers should do?
It's the most time-consuming option for interviews, and so out of respect for candidates, it's appropriate to only bring the ones in that you're seriously considering making an offer to. It's also the right time to start selling hard. When we were doing the video to candidates, we talked about candidates having sweaty palms, being nervous. What an amazing opportunity to show how welcoming and friendly and professional their future colleagues might be. That in-person interview where someone can actually get a sense for what the office or facility environment is like. And so, while interviewing, we often think about get that candidate to prove they're a good fit. By the time you're bringing the person into the office or into the facility, you probably have a strong suspicion they have the right qualities that you're looking for in terms of their actual professional experience. So now it's shifting a little, and we have to get them excited about saying yes to that offer that you're going to make. And I think the in-person interview is an amazing opportunity to show off all the reasons why they're going to want to say yes to that offer.
Also, a great time in my mind if you have maybe some more tactical things you want them to do that would be more difficult virtually. So maybe you have some sort of assessment. Maybe you want to see them touching actual equipment you have to make sure they've used it before, like they said they have. Or I know, entry-level sales roles, sometimes you have them sit at a desk with a salesperson, listening to the calls, making sure they like the vibe. And then also that gives them a chance to meet someone that they'd be working closely with. So it can make it more productive in different ways, things that you maybe couldn't accomplish over the phone or by video. But you're making sure that you're doing that with candidates, a list of candidates that you've already streamlined, right? You're not doing it with every single person. You're making sure that there is truly a fit and that you could potentially cross the finish line with them. And this is just maybe the final cherry on top.
All right, thank you both so much for these incredible tips. Remember, next time that you're hiring, try out some of these suggestions. And of course, remember, twice is nice recruiting. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Redefining Recruitment.